Welcome to Elevated, a place where the mystical meets the everyday. I am Dawn, a stay-at-home mom to a wild and spirited boy, and a guide in the realms of Reiki, Akashic Records, natural healing, and soulful living. Here, we'll talk energy, intuition, spirituality, but also the realness of motherhood, wellness, and creating balance in the chaos of it all. So grab your tea, take a deep breath, and join me as we explore healing, alignment, and the beauty of both the magical and the messy. Welcome to Elevated. Welcome to Elevated. I'm Dawn. I'm your host. How are you doing today? I hope you are doing wonderful. It is the beginning of March. Where has 2 months gone? Can someone please tell me? Please. I feel all of February I was sick. I feel like my son and I just had sickness after sickness after sickness. I think we're finally done. This last week, he was sick for the whole week. We got him better just before his birthday party. He was sick for his 4th birthday. He's doing great now. There's no coughing. He's not sick anymore. He's not stuffed up. It's totally back to normal for him and for me. I think I had a sickness for 3 weeks. I finally seem to have gotten rid of it. I'm wondering, though, if I almost had like a little bit of pneumonia or something. My husband kept saying, I think you have like pneumonia. And I was like, I don't know. I'm not that bad. I was taking Mullein tea. I did live blood a while ago and it showed up that I have phlegm on my lungs. I was taking Mullein to try and get that out. And that was a huge help. I was just coughing so much stuff out, getting so much gunk out. It was wonderful. And then my son and I on Thursday, we started doing lymphatic workouts. It's a 10-minute workout that I found on YouTube. We do it every single morning. We don't on weekends because my husband's home. It's great. He tries so hard. It's so cute. He's trying. That's all I can say. He's moving his body for 10 minutes and it's helping him regulate his nervous system anyways. But I found the 2 days that I did it, it really helped me as well. When we started lymphatic workouts, I said to him, Bud, this is to help us and our immune system so we don't get sick anymore. And he is tired of being sick too. He's like, okay, Mom, okay. So then he tells my husband that night when we first started, Dad, we did lymphatic workout and it helps my immune system not be so sick. It was so cute. And my husband's like, oh, okay, sure, and it is good. So we've been doing that the last, like I said, just a couple days last week and we'll continue on with it. And it's not a hard workout by any means. And the lady too, she works with your brain to be able to make it so that you can move your head around and not be dizzy, which is wonderful because for my son's birthday, we got him this chair that basically is just on a pivot and it'll do 360s. And it's fun. Like it is such a fun chair / toy, if you will, because it seems like it's a toy. And he goes on and he spins around and he's perfectly fine and he's not dizzy. I used to be able to do that. When I was a kid, I used to be able to spin and not be dizzy at all. Now I do like 2 or 3 rotations on this chair and I'm like, whoa, so dizzy. Like I cannot handle it. This will definitely help with this lymphatic workout to work on that part of my brain so that I'm not always dizzy, which would be really great because if I'm dizzy now for something simple, what's going to happen in 10, 20, 30 years from now? So that'll be good. And then I had some time while he was sick to come up with some ideas of what I want to do for my podcast. So I met with Jackie today, who was on my podcast a couple of weeks ago, and we discussed access bars a couple of weeks ago. And then today what we discussed was being you and how to be your authentic self. And she does classes on this. And it's something that she's really, really passionate about is being who you truly are. So we had that discussion. I don't think I'm going to put it out next week. I think it'll be the week after, which will be great. I'm excited for that. And then I also messaged another lady. I want to have her on the podcast. She's just kind of finishing up some stuff. She had a really busy February. So we'll meet up in the next little bit. And she wants to talk about, was it light language or light being, something like that. And I was like, ooh, that's really intriguing. I love learning from people. So if there's anyone that is knowledgeable in anything or just wants to have a discussion, I love having that knowledge and those discussions and learning a little bit more as well. So I'm excited to have her on and connect with her in the next little bit. But the one topic that I was kind of intrigued to do was your birth order. I've always heard like there's eldest child syndrome, there's middle child syndrome, there's baby syndrome. And sometimes I know you get pegged as being like the eldest child or the baby or the middle or whatever the case might be. And a lot of people are like, oh, you can tell that they're the eldest. Oh, you can tell that they're the baby. Oh, you can tell that they're your middle child. And so I was intrigued by this too, because I was like, well, what's sort of going on with our brains? Like, how does this happen? Why does this happen? And then the other question I had was, does this happen with age gap children? Really interesting to know, because for my family, my youngest brother was born, there's a 14.5-year difference between him and I. So that would essentially make me a middle child. But I don't know if I resonate so much as a middle child. Maybe there's a portion of it that I would, but not fully, because for 14.5 years, I was the baby of the family. So there's kind of that. And then what happens as well is, do we carry this through in our adult years? I know as like children, there's certain qualities that we probably possess, being an eldest child, a middle child, baby. But do we carry those into our adult years? And so I was intrigued to find out that information as well. And about the age gap, because even now with my son and my bonus son, there's 23 years difference. So in my mind, is it like we're going to have an only child and an only child? Because my bonus son doesn't live with us. He's a father. He has his own little guy now. So when you look at that, you're like, well, yeah, he's the eldest, but there's 23 years difference. So he went through his whole childhood, adolescence, early adulthood being literally an only child. And now, yes, he's classified as the eldest child. Does that change? Something I was interested in. And then for my son, because he's the only one at home at this point in time, is he gonna be more like an only child as well? Or is he gonna resonate more as the baby of the family? Because I don't think we're gonna have any other kids, so he would technically be the baby of the family. So I was kind of intrigued with these questions that were going on in my mind while, I'm taking care of a little sick one. And so of course I had to figure it out, and this is what I found out. So let's get into this podcast about our birth order. So birth order is not a personality stereotype. It is a developmental position inside an emotional ecosystem. The earliest psychological exploration of birth order theory came from Alfred Ander, who proposed that sibling position shapes motivation, belonging, and your worldview. So later, family systems theory, especially through Murray Boehm, emphasized that families operate as emotional units. So when stress increases, roles stabilize the system. So children unconsciously absorb roles to maintain attachment security, and attachment security is survival, which makes sense, right? In order to survive, you have to be able to attach. You see it with all children, really, and I'm really learning that a lot by being a mom, that our survival really is based on the attachments that we have. So a child with a very secure attachment is going to be the child that has not necessarily the parents that stay home with them all the time, but it's going to have the parents that are present with them when they are home with them, and the ones that maybe co-sleep with them. Like they're saying how co-sleeping with a child or room sharing with a child until much later into their life has more of an attached child, and a more confident child, and a child that can rebound from a lot of different situations a lot better, and they're more emotionally regulated, versus the children that did the cry it out method. And it's just new science that's coming out and studies that are coming out. To understand birth order, we must understand the developing nervous system. So how a child's brain actually develops is in 3 different stages. So there is the brain stem stage, which is basically like your survival and automatic regulation. And then you're going to move into the limbic system, which is going to be your attachment and your emotional memory. And then we move into the prefrontal cortex, which is your reasoning and your impulse control and your identity. Prefrontal cortex is something that takes up to about 26-ish, 28 years for people to actually fully develop. So that's why you see kids having a lot of, especially young kids, having a lot of impulse control. They just don't have it. They may bite, they may kick, they may scream, they may throw themselves on the floor and have that tantrum. It's not that they are bad kids. They just don't have impulse control. It's the ones where you tell them, please don't touch that, that's hot. And then they just touch it anyways, because impulsively they're like, ooh, don't touch it, it's hot, I want to feel what hot is. And then they do it. They can't physically stop themselves. So saying to a kid like, why did you do that? It doesn't help them. It actually shames them because they don't have the ability to control that impulse. And then they feel bad and they feel like they're not worthy or good enough and they're a bad kid in quotations because they did that. So prefrontal cortex literally takes till our mid to late 20s to develop in both female and male. In males, it does take longer. And I think that's why you see 18, 19, 20-year-olds, college students, and you're just shaking your head as a 30-year-old or as a 40-year-old, or even when they become 30, 40, and they're like, what did I do in my 20s, like my early 20s, and they're just bewildered by what they did. It's literally because their prefrontal cortex has not fully developed yet, and it will develop, like I said, by 26, 28. So when you have a sibling that is introduced, or when a child remains as an only child, the attachment system responds accordingly. So there are key systems that are involved in the attachment system, and there is the amygdala, which is in the brain, and this detects threat. It registers, am I safe? Am I still loved? Am I needed? Am I wanted? That type of thing. And then you have the HPA axis, which is the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. And this regulates our stress hormones like cortisol, deals with our fight or flight. If the attachment feels threatened, then our cortisol rises. And there's a repeated pattern, and then repeated patterns will actually shape the baseline stress tone. So it'll just shape what our baseline stress is, which is no different as adults. If we're constantly under stress, our cortisol rises. And what we do is we're reshaping our baseline of stress, and it could keep going up and going up. So then we're taking on more stress, more stress, more stress, right? And then there is the default mode network. So if you listen to last week's podcast on spiritual awakening, we discussed the default mode network. And what it involves is identity in self-narration. So for children form unconscious identity scripts, and it could be, I'm the responsible one, I'm invisible, I'm the baby, I'm alone but special. And these scripts become a neural highway. So this just becomes normal for them. They're always like, I'm the responsible one, so I have to do the responsible thing no matter what. Even if one day they have an impulse to do something that is irresponsible. And even if they act on the irresponsible part of it, then they're going to have such extreme guilt because they're supposed to be the responsible one all the time. They're not supposed to be irresponsible. That's what their younger sibling would do, type of thing, right? So you have those scripts that play out, and you hear a lot of times like the good girl, the smart kid, the strong kid, that type of thing, the bad kid. And again, that was quotations. So there's all of those scripts as well. And it's not always subconsciously of what a child may put into them. It may also be what people around them are putting on them as well. We're going to do this a little bit different. We're going to do no age gap and then age gap for these syndromes. And again, I think it's just interesting to see if there's going to be a difference between age gap and no age gap. So for no age gap, to be an oldest child, there's going to be 1 to 5 years difference of age in between you and your next sibling. The eldest experience undivided attention first. They're the only one. They're the only one that mom and dad have to focus on, so they get all of the attention. Your parents typically with their first child are more anxious. They don't really know what's going on. They're learning with their first child. They're more structured. They're more rule focused. They're more achievement oriented. Like there's so much that I see just on social media, especially with first time parents, or has my baby hit their milestone yet? They need to be doing schoolwork at the age of 2 to learn their ABCs and their colors and this, and we got to work on this and that. Like they need X amount of time for tummy time, and they need X amount of time to be looking at this. And parents are more anxious because they don't know what to expect with the first child. So then when a sibling arrives, the eldest experiences a dethronement, which makes sense. I mean, now mom and dad have to divide their attention from you to another child. And that other child is needing everything and needs mom and dad for literally its survival. So now mom and dad are busy feeding the other one, changing the other one, trying to get it to sleep and nap. And you're kind of now sort of on your own, where you may still need those things depending the age difference. Like I'm thinking of myself and my older brother. We're exactly 1 year apart, literally to the day, just a few hours difference. Okay. So he's 1. He still needs naps. He still needs his diaper change. His bedtime's different than my bedtime. He still needs to be fed. Yes, he's on solid food, but he still needs to be fed. He still needs certain things. So now my mom is dividing her attention from her 1-year-old who had only her attention and she was able to focus just on him, to now giving him half of the attention because the other half has to go to me. But I'm needing more attention than what he needs because he can kind of go play quietly in a corner or destroy the house or whatever it might be. But I need her full attention because I need to feed every 2 hours. I need to have my diaper changed. I need to be rocked to sleep and all that kind of stuff, right? So now you can see where there's that dethronement for that eldest child. And even if it's handled gently, the nervous system of that child is still going to perceive loss of exclusivity. There's no way that could not happen. I don't know how to say that could not happen. It is going to literally happen. I think about us with our dogs. When we got our first dog, she was everything. She was the only one that we had to worry about. 9 years later, we brought in a different puppy. Well, now her attention is still being divided, and this puppy is getting more of our attention because it's a puppy and it needs more of our attention. Then a year and a half later, we bring in another puppy. Well, our middle dog, she's losing even more attention. Our oldest is losing a lot of attention that she used to get because now this puppy needs more. So the puppy needs more and the middle puppy needs a little bit less, but the oldest, you're almost forgetting about in a way because you just don't have the time. And not that you just don't have the time, but they're able to take care of themselves more. They don't need to be let out every 20 minutes because they're going to be peeing on the floor because they don't know not to pee in the house type of thing yet, right? So there's that. There's a loss of exclusivity. There's the amygdala activates. And if for whatever reason the parents respond with, "You're the big one now," the child may actually internalize, "I must grow up to stay loved." And I mean, there's a lot of times where we're like, well, you're the older one, you're the bigger one, and it's not that we mean to do anything by it by any possible way. It's just, it is reality. They are the bigger one now. They are the older one now. And now the child is like, well, I must grow up so that I can stay loved. I must grow up so I can be seen. I must grow up. A common pattern that happens to the nervous system is sympathetic dominance. So basically your fight or flight is going to kick in, and there's going to be certain traits like perfectionism could be one of them. Hyper responsibility could be one. Emotional suppression could be one. Fear of failure could be another one. There could be chronic mild cortisol elevation, and this may wire attachment-based identity. It may not, but it may, right? All depending. Well, now in the teens, what your eldest is going to see is that there's an increase in your limbic activation. So that's the second part of your brain developing. And this could look like your eldest child starts to suppress their emotions, and it can result in anxiety, panic attacks, eating disorders, controlled behaviors. Maybe they get burnt out a lot more. And then their prefrontal cortex, it's over functioning at this point in time, and they're struggling with vulnerability in themselves. Doesn't matter if they're the eldest, the only child, the middle child, the baby, doesn't matter. All teens have vulnerability issues. It's so hard in the teen years not to, because they're so social and they're so reliant on their peers. And then in adulthood, potentially what you can see with the eldest child is that there's an overfunction in relationships. There's a struggle asking for help potentially. They may experience chronic tension. They may become the caretakers. So maybe the caretakers of their significant other, of the parents, of their siblings, of their co-workers, their friends, that type of thing. What you'll see an eldest child sort of do when they become parents is parenthood is actually going to reactivate early identity. So their child's chaos could actually trigger the parents' amygdala, and then they may find that they're overstructured. Like they're just not allowing their child to do a lot, and it's a very structured system for that child. They may feel, the eldest child parent as a parent may feel guilt. They may fear that they're failing their children at this point in time. And then if you're a middle child with no age gap, your early imprint, and again, no age gap is anywhere between 1 to 5 years difference, okay? And then we'll say that that's kind of like both ways. So, 1 to 5 years from the eldest, and then 1 to 5 years from the baby of the family. So the middle children are instantly born into comparison. And whether, if you like to admit it or not, when you have that second child, you're comparing them to the first. Well, my first did this, my first did this, my first didn't do this, but you're doing that. You do this different than my first. Like there's always going to be that comparison. I see it right now with my husband, how he compares his firstborn to our son. And there is, he's like, well, my oldest never did this, but this one's doing that. And I was like, they're two different kids, living in two different generational time frames. Like there's 2 decades, almost 2.5 decades between them. The world is just different in general. And the children coming into the world now are a very different soul. They're on a mission. But anyways, there's middle child is always born into comparison, and their early attachment environment is divided right from the start, right? They don't get mom and dad's exclusive attention because there's another child that needs their attention. So right from day one, that child is birthed. In that moment, they do not get undivided attention because there is another child already. They may feel less intensely mirrored, and the insula, which is the social pain processing center in our brain, may become highly sensitive. And their internal belief systems might be like, I shouldn't cause trouble. I need to differentiate. And the nervous system goes between sympathetic, so seeking validation, to the dorsal vagal withdrawal, which is invisibility. And how many times do you see a middle child trying to seek that validation, but then also feeling invisible? Seek that validation, feeling invisible. Typically, most parents say that their middle child is their hardest child, but it's not that they're the hardest child. They're just trying to be validated, to be seen in some ways. But then they always feel like they're invisible anyways because they have this eldest sibling. And then when that youngest one comes along, well, now mom and dad are paying attention to the oldest because the oldest has all the firsts. And then the baby are all the last. And this middle child's like, but I'm still here. There's still me, and you do see that, definitely. So in the teen years with a middle child, you could often see that they attach strongly to their peers. Their dopamine reward circuits may be heavily peer oriented, and rejection can feel absolutely devastating for them. And that would definitely make sense. Like if they're not feeling like they're being seen at home, if they're not feeling like they're being heard or validated, if they feel sort of invisible in their actual house, and not that parents mean to do this. This isn't to blame parents in any way, but it's just the reality of having more than one child. And there's no right and there's no wrong of only having one child, okay? And as a middle child, it's not just saying like this is only with 3 children in your family. This could literally be like middle children could be if you have 4 kids, those 2 in the middle are going to still feel the same way. They are still the middle children. If you have 5 kids, those 3 in the middle are still going to feel the same way, and your eldest is still going to feel the same way. So as middle children or children, whatever the case might be in your family, they are going to attach strongly to the peers. They're going to attach because they want to feel seen, heard, and validated. And then if for whatever reason they are rejected, that is going to be so deeply hurt to them because it basically brings up a wound, almost like they're not seen and they're invisible in their own family, and now you're rejecting them, which is sort of the same idea as well. So in adulthood, what we see with the middle child is that they may over accommodate everybody. just try to make everybody so happy. Their fear of abandonment, they feel like they were abandoned because there's an older child and a younger child. And then they may struggle asserting their needs, and they may become mediators professionally. And it's funny, I technically am a middle child. There is an age gap. So I have an older brother who, yes, is exactly 1 year older than me, exactly 365 days older than me and a few hours. And by a few, I mean less than 12. And then I am 14 and a half years difference between my younger brother and myself. And I will not lie, even though there was 14 and a half years difference between my younger brother and I, me becoming a middle child was something very hard for me. I don't think my parents know that I struggled with this at all, but it was very, very hard for me because there were times where I did feel that I was unseen. There were times where I felt that I was not being heard. There were times where I felt that my needs got pushed aside and my older brother's needs were there and they were met. And my younger brother's needs were always met, either by me or by my parents. And that's fine. And I'm not blaming my parents. It's nothing wrong, but that's how I perceived it and I felt like it. And maybe that isn't how they perceived it or feel like it. And that's okay. Everyone's entitled to perceive how things happen to them in their lives, however they perceive them. There's no right, there's no wrong, and there's no judgment. So I will just say, even with the 14 and a half years difference, I did feel at times that invisibility. So then as parents, a middle child, they may hyper-focus on fairness. They may avoid conflict. They may fear favoritism. I do have a problem for over-accommodating everybody. I have a fear of abandonment, but I don't think that has anything to do with me being a middle child. I think that just has everything to do with like my early years of my life. I don't think that is anything to do with me being a middle child. I struggle at times to assert my needs. And like me as myself, I struggle for me to give myself my needs. I will give to everybody else around me and not to myself. And it is funny until I like literally was looking at this and realizing like we just had my son's 4th birthday party. The amount of over accommodating I did for that birthday party. One, we had it scheduled for 1 weekend. Then my son got into snowmobile racing and there was a snowmobile race the previous weekend before his original birthday party date. They canceled that and they moved it to the date that we originally were going to have his birthday party. So we canceled his birthday party so that he could go snowmobile racing and my husband could go snowmobile racing because it's his race, to then move him a week further out so that he could have his birthday party still. When his birthday came, like for his birthday party, the amount of different drink options that we had for adults was insane. Like hard liquor, there's pop that we need to have water, we need to have juice boxes for kids. For my husband's mom, she likes this specific Coke Zero. She likes Fresca. I literally made my husband go back to the store 3 times to get the right drink options for his mom. I'm sure she would have been okay having water. I'm sure she would have been okay having Coke. But I made sure that we had the drinks that she likes. Again, over accommodating for her. Bonus son and his wife were coming with their newborn who is 3 weeks old. I made sure that we had a spot for them to be able to change their little guy, that they had wipes. They bring their own diaper bag, but I had wipes. I made sure that there was dog poop bags in case they had a poopy diaper and they wanted to put it in there so it didn't stink up their bag. Over accommodating. I texted them and I said, hey, look, your bedroom is available for you guys if you want to go in there, if you want to breastfeed, if you want to change your little guy. I got everything set up for you. This is how my brain works. I over accommodate for everybody and every situation to make sure that everyone is okay. It is exhausting. It truly is. Now, is that a middle child syndrome situation, or is that maybe just something to do with my early years of my childhood? I don't know. Now we move into the baby. So the youngest child, again, no age gap, okay? So this is between 1 to 5 years. So they will have 1 to 5 years between them and the middle child. The early imprint from this is parents are often more relaxed or more tired. Yeah, by the 3rd one, 4th or 5th, yeah. A, you kind of know what to expect by this point. B, you kind of just let it go. And I shouldn't say that it is the third, because it could literally be one or two. Like you could just be the baby and an eldest child. So you could be a 2-child household. The youngest receives high affection, lower expectations, frequent rescue. And I'm just trying to think of my childhood, because I had 14 and a half years where I was the baby of the family. I don't know if there was lower expectations, or if maybe because I was female, there was maybe a bit more expectations. I don't know. Frequent rescues. Maybe when I became an early adult, there was a lot more rescuing there, but by then I was the baby or the middle child. I don't know. That one's interesting, but I could see where they're coming with that. And this can wire a strong reward seeking dopamine pathways in the baby of the family. And love becomes associated with charm. And what happens with our nervous system is often the ventral vagal social is engaged. So under stress, impulse sympathetic activation is happening, and there's executive functioning may develop more slowly if responsibility is minimized. And I can totally see that. How can you have executive functioning if everything is sort of being done for you, if there's less responsibility on you, that type of thing? I'm not saying give your children a ton of responsibility, but we kind of see it like with our son. We still get him dressed majority of the time. It's just a habit that we got into, and he really likes us to help him get dressed, and he knows how to get dressed. And in the mornings when we're just him and I at home, and I'm putting the dishes away, he'll be good to go into his room and get changed by himself. He can do it. And if he needs a little bit of help, he'll come out. The play school days where he's going to play school, he wants me to dress him. At that point in time, he wants that connection, right? And then in the teen years, what you can possibly see with a baby of the family is more rebel. Like they're more dramatically being a rebel. They seek novelty. They resist authority a lot more. And then in adulthood, what you could potentially see is they may avoid responsibility. They may seek caregivers, so someone that's going to take care of them. So maybe their partner is someone that, will be more of a father figure or a mother figure type thing to them. Or they overcompensate with achievement. And that, again, I had 14 and a half years of being the baby of the family. And I don't want to say that in my teen years, I was a rebel. I don't want to say that I seeked novelty. I might have resisted authority a little bit, but I feel like every teenager resists authority. I think it's just us learning to be independent a little bit. And I think that's if you're an only child, eldest, middle, baby, I think that kind of happens. But maybe they're saying more on like a higher level that you're resisting authority. So I won't go as far as that. I think I was just doing like the normal everyday sort of teen pushing boundaries type of thing to see what would sort of happen. But I do feel like in adulthood there for a while, I was kind of like, especially in my early 20s, avoiding responsibility if I could, seeking more caregivers for my boyfriends in that situation. But I do overcompensate with achievement. I've done it ever since I was actually little. My schoolwork was very important. I wanted to have very good grades. I always wanted to overdo quite a bit. I was known as the brown noser because I overdid for my teachers and that type of thing. And I do see even in my work culture, when I was in the corporate world, how much I overachieved. I literally would put out work between 2 to 3 people on my team every single day. I was doing that much more work than what my teammates were doing. And then as a parent, the baby of the family may struggle with authority or routine. I do not, by any means, struggle with authority and routine. I will say that 100%. An only child syndrome. So this is where I'm really interested to find out, does my bonus son resonate more as an only child? And will my current son resonate as an only child with 23 years difference between them? Let's find out. So only children are developmentally unique. They are both the eldest and the baby and never dethroned, which is true, right? Because there's no one else. It's always just them. I look at my bonus son is not dethroned because he literally was out of the house, living his own life, engaged at that time. He never really had to give up his attention because he was living his own life at that point in time. And we had gotten into a role and a rhythm of what him being an adult looked like with us. An only child will receive prolonged adult interaction. 100%. Both of my boys have that. My bonus son hung out with adults a lot, like a lot. He did have one really, really, really good best friend that he saw every single weekend, and they hung out and they were allowed to be kids. And he had a really good friend that he hung out with at school. My bonus son hung out with adults pretty much all the time. High expectations. So the parents have high expectations on them. There's intense mirroring, so mirroring of parents, and often high pressure. So you expect a lot more of them. And I'm just trying to think, like, too, as my younger brother, because of the 14 and a half years difference age gap between him and I, so that would have been 15 and a half between him and my older brother. I feel like sometimes, like, my younger brother had more prolonged adult interaction. He did. There was, like, we were there, but then we kind of moved out and did our own adult thing as well. So he had maybe 5-ish years where we were all living under the same roof, but even not really, because we were kind of like in and out of the house as late teens. Like when we graduated high school, we were not really at home much. So he had about 3 years of us really living at home. And then after that, we kind of just were in and out type of thing. So he had a lot more prolonged adult interaction at that point in time. Definitely a higher intense mirroring of my parents for sure. I would say that. Often higher pressure. I don't know. Not from my parents. And I don't think that my bonus son has any higher pressure by any means, or my younger son. But my son right now, he definitely is hanging out with adults. Now that just could be because we're older parents. We don't have a lot of friends with kids. Their nervous system develops without sibling competition. So this can create advanced verbal skills, strong imagination, heightened adult attunement, but also performance identity, loneliness sensitivity, and difficult sharing space. Advanced verbal skills. My son talks a lot, but that doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that he's advanced by any means. He can say really, really, really big words really, really well, but then sometimes simple words like fun or think, he's not very good at pronouncing yet. But he is 4, so we'll see. Just turned 4, so we'll see how this year goes. Strong imagination. This kid's imagination is so good. It is unbelievably amazing, but not even just his imagination as like he's playing with a pretend person, but his ability to think outside the box, his ability to remember things, his ability to look at something and see it in such a different way. And even my bonus son was like that. When we were building our house, he could look at something and he actually would say to his dad, and he was like 12 at the time, like, why don't you try it this way? And it would work. Loneliness, I can definitely see that. For both of my sons, I can see where there would have been loneliness. We just aren't the family that has a lot of friends with kids, and our kids just don't get socialized kind of in that way. It's more of an adult environment. And yeah, there is that loneliness. You know, sometimes we get busy and sometimes we don't always have the time to fully sit down and spend time with them, and they may have to start play on their own a little bit more. I could definitely see the difficulty in sharing space 100% with my youngest, not the oldest. My oldest is very, very, very good at accommodating people and sharing and all that kind of stuff. He's always been amazing at that. So the nervous system for an only child is often hyper-tuned to adult emotional tone. I will say my 4-year-old definitely 100%. That is it to a T. And I will say that my bonus son, he definitely is able to read adult emotional tones very, very, very well. And he has been able to do that since I have known him at the age of 10. They may develop anxious or attachment-driven identity. And I can see that for sure. And then there is the prefrontal cortex often matures quickly due to adult modeling. And I can see that as well. And I could even see that with my younger brother. He was in his early 20s. And some of the things that he was doing, I was like, there is no way that other kids at that age to be doing it. Like, he was putting savings away, him and his girlfriend, so they could go on trips. And they had a joint account where if they were going to go out for supper, they were going to use that joint account, like that type of thing, so that neither one of them was stuck paying the bill. They would just put a portion of their money into there, and then that's what they had for fun money type of thing. And I was just like, what kid at the age of 19 or 20 thinks of that? And he did. The teen years for an only child, they may struggle socially at first. I can definitely see that 100% because they don't maybe always have peers around. And now in the teenage years, peers are so important. They may excel academically. They may feel isolated. And they may seek independence intensely. Excel academically. I can definitely see that where they would assume that that would be something that you would like to see them do. They're seeking approval, feel isolated for sure, where they are feeling a little bit more isolated, or people just don't understand them as much or don't get what they're kind of going through. And then to seek the independence intensely, I could see that too because they've been with adults, they're mirroring that adults, they just want to get out in the world and do that kind of stuff. And then as adults, an only child may often be self-reliant. They may struggle with compromise. Yeah, they've never had to compromise. It was always about them. They may feel the pressure of parents or grandparents or society in general and fear disappointing parents deeply. Because your parents only have you, so maybe they've put so much pressure on you without realizing it and without meaning to. Could be, for sure. And as parents, they may be overstructured. Fear sibling rivalry if they have multiple kids. They've never had to deal with that for sure. I can definitely see that. Or struggle when their children demands constant interaction. Age gaps. Let's get into that. So age gaps change our nervous system imprinting drastically. So parents are neurologically different people 10 to 15 years later. I will 100% agree with this. The way that my mom raised my older brother and myself compared to how she raised my younger brother was a totally different mom. The financial situations are different, the relational relationships are different, and the emotional climate shifts 100%. So my mom was a single mom for majority of my older brothers and my childhood. And then she met my stepdad, and then later they had my brother. And my stepdad and her have always been together through my brother's life. Financially, our financial situation growing up as my mom and my brother and myself was definitely different compared to my mom, like my stepdad, my mom, my brother, and myself. The 5 of us compared to the 3 of us. I see that my mom would have been, and I don't blame her at this, and I understand now being a mom myself. She was the mom, she was the dad, she financially had to do everything. She had no one to help her. If she had a hard day at work, there was no one to come home and cook a meal. It was expected that she cook the meal because my brother and I couldn't do it. If we had an event to go to, so brownies, pubs, baseball, she was expected to take us there. She was expected to clean the house, to get the groceries, to feed us, to clothe us, she was expected to do all of that. There was nobody there to help her. Can I say that she was probably exhausted? I can definitely say that. Can I say that there were moments or days where maybe her tolerance level and patience level was lower than when she had my stepdad and myself to help her with my brother? Yes, I can say that. Definitely. 100%. You know, there was times when my mom and dad would go and pick up my brother and they would be coming home and they had asked me to start supper because I was able and capable of doing that. Whereas my mom couldn't do that with my older brother and I. We weren't capable of making supper. We were 6, 7 years old, you know, and younger. We didn't even know how to make craft dinner. I see the difference right there. Also, too, if my mom needed a little bit of a break, she could ask, hey, can you watch your brother for 5 minutes, 10 minutes? Of course, no big deal. I loved watching him. I can see the difference. And even as I look at my situation, so with my bonus son and my younger son, just how much I have grown from the time that I've known my bonus son, which was 16 years ago, 17 years ago, till now, how much I've grown. And so before my son came, there would have been about a 13-year difference of meeting my bonus son and having my son. I see how I grew emotionally, how we financially grew, just everything that had happened just in our own personal life. So I can see where the age gap is different on the nervous system for the children. So the eldest with a 10 to 15 year age gap. So this would, let's look at it as my older brother. They're often parentified. No, he wasn't. He definitely made sure that he was not. 100%. I will say that. The caregiving circuits activate early. My brother and my bonus son, this does not apply to them. This can suppress peer bonding development. I definitely can see that. Yep, 100%. But not, I don't think in either way that my brother and my bonus son were parentified in any way. And the caregiving circuits definitely for neither one of them were activated early. I will definitely say that. For adulthood, the risks could be burnout, avoiding parenthood, or over-parenting their own children. Yeah, I could see that if there's like a 10-year difference. I mean, it's a little bit different when you look at my son and my bonus son. There's 23 and a half years difference. And then even with like my two brothers, there was 15 and a half years difference. I mean, my older brother, he was kind of out doing his own thing by that point in time. You know, he was hanging out with friends that could drive, and he was going to work, and he got his license right away, and he was driving and doing his own thing and going out rebelling and doing whatever he was doing. Looking at my brother as a parent, he definitely doesn't overparent by any means. There was no real avoiding being a parent either. I don't know enough if he's burnt out or not. And with my bonus son, I don't see him avoiding parenthood. He was excited to be a parent. He's mid-20s, a parent, so he's not avoiding parenthood by any means. Over-parenting, well, his little guy's only 3 weeks, so it's pretty hard to overparent at 3 weeks. I do want to say that when you have an age gap like that, you might prevent your children from being teen parents because they kind of know what goes and what's involved in having a child. So there is that aspect of it. Let's look at the middle child with an age gap. Let's see if this resonates with me here. May feel erased if too far from both siblings. I was really close to my older brother in age. By this point in time in teenage years, we were definitely not close. We were definitely closer when we were younger in our relationship, but as the teenage years went on, we weren't in that regard. Identity instability increases. I definitely had a hard time to know where I belonged. I was no longer the baby of the family. It was teenage years too. So you're going through the whole awkwardness of being a teenager at that point in time, you know, friend groups and being popular, not being popular, being liked, not being liked. I think just in general, I don't even know, it wouldn't even have to be just with my family. It was just in general, my life in that time. I definitely had an identity instability for sure. I didn't even know who I was at that point in time. So I can see that. And then a baby with a 10 to 15 year age gap. So often raised like an only child. So my younger brother was basically raised like an only child, but with authority figure siblings. Yes, 100%. I lived at home on and off until I was about 28. So I'd gone to school for a bit. We had moved provinces. I was kind of in and out of the house when we had moved provinces, but I was always there. My parents could rely on me to take care of my brother if ever they really, truly needed. They didn't actually ask a lot for me to take care of my brother. I offered quite a bit to take care of him. I loved taking care of him. I loved having what we could classify as date days with him and just go do fun things with him. I know when we lived in Winnipeg, I took him to the Winnie the Pooh festival because I kind of wanted to go and he was young enough and I could go do that. I took him to a football game, or we went to Fast and the Furious. Like I always kind of had this little buddy, if you will, but he definitely had to, at that point in time, still respect that I was an authority figure and I was older than him and I was there to protect him. I definitely see where they would have that being an only child, but with authority figure siblings, 100%. Did we struggle relating as equals later? I'm going to say in my situation, no. My younger brother and I were close all the time. When he became a teenager, he spent so much time with us, and that really worked out good because there was my bonus son and him, and there was 3 years difference between them. And really, My bonus son was an only child. My brother basically was raised as an only child. And so they were able to do things together, and they formed this really good bond between the two of them. And my brother hung out with us a lot. Like when he got his license, he basically just hung out at our house on weekends, which was great. And it was amazing. I loved it. He got to know all of our friends with kids, which they were all kind of in his age group as well. He got to go just do different things. He went surfing with our friends because they had a surf boat, and they invited him and took him along because he was out. He was just included in so much that we did, and it was great. It was wonderful. So no, in my situation, there wasn't a struggle relating as equals later on. I always thought of him as my little brother, but I always thought of him too as he got older as an equal. He was just my friend. And then extreme age gap. So this is where my bonus son and my son are, between 20 to 30 years. This becomes generational, 100%. It was still generational between my brother and I. He didn't even know what a air popping popcorn machine was. I brought it home one time. I was like popping popcorn. He's like, what is that? And I was like, what do you mean, what is this? And then I realized he's never seen one before. So there is, the 20 to 23 years, definitely, that's like 2 decades, almost 2.5 decades difference between them. So there is that generational part of it. The eldest may be neurologically an adult when the baby arrives. Yeah, my bonus son was an adult. Like I said, he was already engaged at that point in time. The baby may grow up with aging parents. Of course, my son's growing up with aging parents. I'm early 40s. My husband's early 50s. Yeah, we're definitely aging 100%. Is he going to have to deal with us being older when he's younger? Yeah, he may have to deal in his 20s with us going into a home. Like his life is going to look differently. My bonus son, on the other hand, he's going to be in his 40s having to deal with that. So there's that kind of difference. Attachment climates are entirely different. Yeah, 100%. They are. The way that the children are raised now, 20 years later, is different. We know about conscious parenting. We know about attachment styles. We know about cry it out. We know about that kind of stuff. Siblings may feel more like aunt and uncle dynamics. 100%. I will say that my boys do not have a sort of brotherly relationship. And that is simply because they don't live in the same household to have that brotherly relationship. Do they love each other? 100%. You can see it in both of their faces. And it means a lot. When my bonus son comes out, my younger son is really happy. He loves giving him a hug. He loves being a part of him. Like he knows that it's his brother. 100%. But there is kind of that different sort of dynamic between them. It's not the same as what it would have been maybe if there was 5 years difference between them or 9 years difference between them. And loneliness risk increases for the youngest. 100%. You have aging parents, for starters. Parents maybe don't take you out as much. They don't do as much with you maybe don't play with you as much. Like there could be so many different sort of dynamics, 100%. And you don't have a sibling here. But I don't think it's any different if you're an only child. The risk of loneliness is going to increase because there's just no one else in the house besides your parents. How could Reiki help with being the eldest, the middle, the baby, age gaps? So for the eldest, what Reiki could do is it would be more working on their heart and solar plex to release some of the issues there. For the middle, it's going to be more of their throat because they just kind of felt invisible, they weren't seen, and then their heart for empowerment. And then the baby, it's going to be the root, which is the foundation, the stability of them, and grounding. They're going to have to ground because they never really had to ground before because everyone just did everything for them. Life was just wonderful, that type of thing. And for an only child, it's going to be working on their crown and their heart integration to release pressure. And I could see where an only child may have a lot more pressure because everything falls on them. Academics are going to fall on them. What they do for a living is going to fall on them, is going to fall more on them because there's not the other children around to kind of take that pressure off of them. So any pressure that the parents may have without even realizing, again, there's no judgment, there's no right, there's no wrong, but without even realizing, that's going to be applied to these children. Energy healing can create embodied safety for sure. How would we use the Akashic records to help our eldest, middle, and babies and only children? The Akashic records, which is popularized now in modern spirituality frames life roles as soul level learning themes. From a spiritual lens, reframing your amygdala activation, you're a middle child and you have to work on being seen because you feel that you're invisible. So you're saying, I chose being invisible so that I could learn how to use my voice. And this activates the prefrontal regulation and reduces shame. So there's a lot that you can do with that. You can also go into the Akashic records and you can see maybe a soul contract as to why did you choose to be the eldest? What lessons do you have to learn from being the eldest or the middle or the baby or the only child? And again, there's no right or wrong. There's no judgment if you're having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 11 kids. There's no judgment. This is just what happens, whether if we like it or not. Every child is going to feel this. Like as an oldest child, as soon as that second child comes in, it doesn't matter. You're still going to feel that change in dynamics because you were number one. You were center of attention. There was nobody else. And now there's another child that, yes, needs to have attention as well. Like it's just how it is. We all survive with it. It's perfectly fine. And to be an only child, you're going to feel more potential pressure. 100%. You're going to feel more loneliness because there's no one else around. You can never say one is better than the other or one is right over the other. There's literally no judgment. There's no right or wrong in this situation. No matter where you fall in the birthing order in your family, it is not random. Your nervous system had to rewire itself so that you could maintain that love. Again, like I said, being the eldest child, your nervous system had to rewire to allow in the idea that somebody else was getting that attention. But neuroplasticity, which means the brain can change, there is that ability for us to change our brain. And the vagus nerve can be strengthened. So you, through healing, can change these role identities, if you will, that we say like, oh, an eldest child is this and this is what's, you can change that 100%. And your identity can evolve. Birth order is a context, but it's not a destiny. An awareness is liberation. So just knowing that I'm the eldest, what does it mean to have the eldest child syndrome? What does that mean? And you look into that, you can literally change the way that your brain reacts to it and thinks about it. You're now aware of it and you could say, I choose this or I don't choose this. I choose to put myself in this limiting box that I never realized that was happening, because I don't know if we fully understand and realize that it is happening or if it just sort of happens. Like as the baby of the family, do you realize that you may not do as much for yourself because everyone had been doing it for you? And it is interesting because when I take my son to daycare, there is a child there that is the baby of 3, and they struggle with him taking off his jackets, putting on his shoes, like all that kind of stuff. And it has been said, well, he is the 3rd, so they tend to just do a lot because they're trying to get out the door. 100%. If you have 3 kids and you are literally trying to get out the door so that you can go to work in the morning, your oldest knows how to do it. Your oldest is going to have to do it 100%. It's like, hey, I don't have time to manage you. You're going to have to manage yourself and you're going to have to do it. Now, if that oldest is able to and the middle child needs a little bit of help, the oldest then is going to be responsible to help that middle child to get ready, because the parent may not have the time to do it because the parent's trying to get themselves ready, never mind the young child that can't do it. So by the time that child becomes 4 or 5 or 6, the parent is just doing everything because they've gotten into this process of just doing it all. It's no different than me, where I've been a stay-at-home mom. I don't want the struggle all the time. So I'm just like, yeah, okay, I'll just get you dressed. Yeah, okay, no big deal. I'll just do that. Instead of having that fight, and I will now catch myself and I will have that fight where I'm like, no, you can try and put your sock on. Just try. If you can't do it, that's fine. I will help you, but just try. And there are days when I have full-blown tantrums over trying to put a sock on. It is the reality. But when it does happen, I definitely make a big to-do. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you did it. Like, I knew you could do it. I'm so proud of you. I just realized for me to get out the door in a sane manner and not taking 25 minutes to get ready, I just do it for my son, because I just don't want to have that struggle. And I'm sure by the time you have 3 kids, you're just tired of that struggle and you just do it because it's just easier. All said and done, it's easier. So again, there's no right, there's no wrong. And as that baby of the family, yes, that was a hindrance for you, but it doesn't mean that you can't change. Definitely 100% you can change. It's just interesting to know kind of like what we take on without even realizing that we take on. No different than me when I looked at it just now and realized like I overcompensate for everybody. I make sure that everybody has everything that they need, not realizing that that probably has something to do with my birth order. So if you want more information about this, there are a couple of books. I will link them in my podcast as well for you. But one of the books is The Birth Order book by Kevin Lehman. It's a classic, accessible read on how birth order influences personality and relationships. You could also read Siblings Without Rivalry, which is Adele Faber and Elaine Maslish, which is a excellent practical support for parents navigating sibling roles. And you could also do a book. It's not on birth order, but I think it's just very good to read anyways. It's called The Body Keeps Score by Bessel van der Klok, MD. And it's great for understanding how early experiences literally wire our brain and body. I want to read this one just in general. I think it would be just so fascinating. Thank you for being here today. I know it was a high level sort of overview of the birth orders. There's just so much. And like I said, I was really intrigued to see the difference of no age gap, and then the extreme age gap, just because that's my life, right? Like I literally have the ability to have a no age gap relationship with my older brother, but then that age gap relationship with my younger brother, and then just my boys in general with their extreme age gap, and just to kind of see how they're going to be and how it really has affected even just myself being a middle child, but with that age gap, which is interesting because I really do believe that I have tendencies of being a baby of the family and then tendencies of being a middle child of the family as well. It was just interesting for me to do this to see the difference, again, like I said, where I fell in and then where my 2 sons are falling in together. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, like, share, rate, review, tell your friends about Elevated. If you want to be on the podcast, go to my website, elevatedsoulhealing.com. Go to the comment section and get a hold of me and let me know that you want to be on my podcast. We can talk about anything that you want. If you have a business of any sort, we could talk about that business. If you're into natural healing, we could talk about that. We can talk about spiritual healing. We can talk about anything. This podcast isn't just about the Akashic Records and Reiki. It's about elevated conversations in general. If you just want to have that elevated conversation, just educate people on whatever, I am here for it. I would absolutely love it. Thank you so much for listening. I'm so happy that you were here today. Thank you, thank you, thank you.